'Tis the season for ghosts, goblins, things that go bump in the night, and roguelike horror games published by Atari. I'm Nima of NGC Gaming. Let's talk about Haunted House. Now, this game came out last week, and I was really interested in it because it did look really fun and almost reminiscent of Luigi's Mansion, although I don't know if I would go that far. I'll let you decide on that. But first, I do have to ask you guys to please hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the content, if you like video game reviews and just video game content in general. We try to make a video every other day here, so by clicking those buttons, you really help the channel out. Anyway, let's get into Haunted House. So I saw this game on the eShop last week, and it looked interesting. Like I said, almost reminiscent of a type of Luigi's Mansion. Obviously not as detailed, not as polished, and well, there's other issues with it as well, but there is some component to it of that. Now, the one thing I didn't notice is that it was a roguelike game. Now, if I'm being honest, I am really kind of getting tired of that genre. It just seems like every game is a version of a roguelike game, and it's now just sort of become, I don't know, almost a typical mechanic in a lot of games. Now, in this game, though, you play as Lynn, a 15-year-old girl who's a musician, loves playing guitar, and has a very interesting uncle. Her uncle is a famous archaeologist, researcher, and someone who really just enjoys the paranormal. She learns that he's disappeared, so she gets a group of her friends together and decide to head over to his gigantic mansion. Without warning, the group is confronted by some evil spirits. Before she knows it, Lynn is completely separated from her friends and can't find her uncle. Alone in this gigantic mansion, she must rely on some of the residents of this mansion. Yes, there are a few other poor souls who are also trapped in this mansion. Well, quickly, she also realizes that there is no escape from this mansion. As she succumbs to a fatal wound, she wakes up and is right back in the mansion again. Once talking to the butler, realizes that there is no escape. Well, not until she breaks this curse, finds her uncle, and puts right what is wrong. Now, as much of a horror game as that actually does sound, the game's not very scary, and I don't think it's meant to be. I think it's more aimed at children and young teenagers. Again, much like Luigi's Mansion. Yes, there's elements of horror to it, but it's not very scary. And also like Luigi's Mansion, you do have a light that pretty much evaporates ghosts and other enemies that you find along the way, although it only works when you sneak up on them. If you face them face to face, it doesn't work. It's a very weird mechanic that honestly sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, like how you would like to. It's funny because I would get in these cycles where I felt like I knew how to use this light, and I would sneak up right behind a ghost or an enemy. As expected, a prompt would come up and I would hit the button and boom, dead enemy. But it didn't always work that way. There would be other times when I would do the exact same routine, but there would be no prompt. And so I would just try to hit the button anyway, and it didn't work. And needless to say, the enemy turned around and attacked me. Now, this game does offer far more mercy than a lot of other roguelikes. I want to be clear on that. Being attacked by an enemy does not condone you to death. In fact, it's easy to run away from them, and you're given many items to help you recover your health, and you're also given many items to trap the ghosts and other evil spirits. You're given a lot of opportunities, I will say that, to not die. Many times, I died in this game because I kind of got bored, and I would rush things along. You see, in each room you enter, you're required to do a certain task. It could be just taking out all the enemies in the room, or you might be asked to destroy all the ghost chains with your light, which is a little bit more confusing than it sounds. It's really easy. Or maybe even find a hidden item and place it on an altar. Either way, upon completion of said task, all the enemies disappear and you're free to roam around and collect different chests and move on to the next room. But the problem is this cycle repeats itself over and over to the point where you're kind of bored of it, to be honest. Like, it gets repetitive so quickly, and I think that that's an issue in roguelike games in general, but that repetition just becomes very old very quick in this game. And I think part of it is because when you first start playing it, it's actually kind of fun. It's not, like I said, scary or even challenging, but it is kind of fun and cute. Again, a lot like Luigi's Mansion, just downgraded version. And while you're still trying to learn the mechanics and controls and how to get by the ghosts and to sneak past them, it is kind of fun. Quickly, like I said, once you learn the mechanics, it just becomes repetitive and you get to a point where you feel like it's needlessly long. Things like fighting a boss or even finding your friends, these really shake things up and it's kind of fun. But these things are far and few between. There's just a ton of filler in this game. A bunch of levels that just kind of repeat themselves and it's the same thing over and over. To the point that, yeah, you get kind of bored. They will shake things up and add different enemies, but the enemies pretty much react just like all other enemies in the game. Even the big scary ones are not very scary or big because usually they're easily handled or you can kind of just sneak right past them. The biggest challenge of this game happens to be the bosses, where instead of actually fighting them, you're required to find certain items to beat them, and these items are kind of random. It'll be like, hey, you need a piece of cheese and 4 or 5 other things, and you'll have this like gigantic area in which you can find these items with the boss always on your tail, as well as a bunch of other enemies in the area that could alert the boss, or you could just alert the enemies. And they mix it up by having just a whole bunch of different treasure chests for you to go through. And then again, that aspect is kind of fun, a little bit challenging, and it kind of shakes things up. But again, the big issue is these are far and few between. For the most part, you're kind of just doing the same thing over and over. There are different areas to explore, but they all kind of feel the same. And like every good roguelike, there's always things to collect. Not only just items, but these gems that you will get and you get to retain after you die. You get to go back and enter the shop before your next run, and in this shop you can upgrade pretty much everything. How much damage your light does, how much health you have, stamina recovery, things of that nature, and you just kind of build your character up until I guess you can get further in the game. Now, to be honest though, I never felt like I was underpowered, and that's why I think some of these gems and this ability to upgrade yourself didn't really match the strategy of the game, if that makes sense. Because see, a big reason why you do die is because enemies find you, you run out of health, and it's more about alerting enemies than it is actually fighting them. So I didn't feel like this really made that much of a difference. I suppose towards the end, when you've really maxed out your hearts and your attack power and whatever, it can make a difference, but it's just for a good chunk of the game, doesn't really seem to matter. Now, like I said before, graphics are not great, but they're okay. Like, they're pretty decent. I have to say, like, it's aesthetically pleasing. It is. The audio is decent, and I actually do like some of the songs that are in the game. Again, I think my big problem is there's a lot of potential for this game, but it just feels like they took a 3 to 4 hour game and wanted to get 10 hours out of it. Also, while leaning on the roguelike aspect, didn't really understand how that could improve the game's mechanics or even just play into the game's mechanics. I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to completely harp on it and say it's just this awful game, because it's not. It performs really well graphically and audio wise. It's really good. Well, not really good. It's good. It's just unfortunately that there's lack of puzzles, the repetitiveness, leaning into the roguelike genre where it really didn't need to. All of this add up to be a rather mediocre experience. And with a price tag of $20, it just seems a bit high. So for me, I would rate this game at about a 6 out of 10. Like, I think it's a fine game. It gets a passing score, but it's definitely one of those that I would have on my wish list waiting for a good sale, because I just think that the asking price is a lot for what seems to be a good chunk of filler. But that's just my thoughts on it. I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are. Have you guys played this game? Are you looking forward to it? Any and all your thoughts in the comment section down below would be appreciated. I love each and every one of you guys. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.